Civil War was written and directed by Alex Garland and stars Kirsten Dunst, Wagner Moura, Kaylee Spaney, Stephen McKinley Henderson, Jesse Plemons, Nick Offerman, amongst others. This takes place in a near future in America, which has entered a state of total societal collapse. A dictatorship has been established by the government, and now different states have decided to secede from it and form their own armies and unions, leading to the Second American Civil War. In the middle of all of this, there are a group of journalists who are trying to follow the stories and tell them to the world, being led by Lee Smith, played by Kirsten Dunst. And as they're going around the country, they witness some stuff that challenges their notions of being journalists and essentially what else the Civil War can result in. It's a little hard to talk about something like this when you've had some personal experiences to it, and that's something I feel like I should share before I go on with it. Before I got fully involved with film journalism, talking about cinema and anything else in general relating to that subject, I was also doing some political journalism before that. And I was talking about things that were happening in the world. At the time, I was mostly focused on the US because the election was ramping up. This was in 2016. And there were a few years when I was both studying politics as well as writing some think pieces. Something that we were taught very early on when it came to that process was, in order to tell the story, you can't have a subjective side taken when you're discussing it, because at the end of the day, your job is to convey the story as is to people. There's a line, in fact, by Kirsten Dunst in the movie that says it perfectly, is we record so people ask, and we don't get bogged down in the questions because that's not our job. Our job is to just tell it like it is. And that's something that can often come with its pros and cons, because even when we were doing that, there were things that were clearly not great. And if you've been through the election cycle in 2016, we're following through to 2020, some of the after effects of that in 2021 and beyond since then you know that there are certain things that go past the point of objectivity. And Civil War, in a lot of ways, handles all of those elements. When we start off the movie, for instance, when we're following Lee's character, she is someone who very much is under that impression, someone who is just recording the story as is. And as things progress and things become more and more serious, you find that somewhat challenged, because even while you're looking at it from her perspective, you have to go, well, you know, this part isn't totally right? Or this part makes more sense, or what exactly it is. But I like the fact that this movie acts as an ode to journalism in that spectrum, but also as to how it's approached. Lee approaches it that way, but then there's Joel, played by Wagner Moura, who enjoys the thrill of certain events. Like when he is in the middle of the action, even though he understands the dramatic and disturbing weight of it, at the end of the day, when things are going down, like there is a certain aspect of that which is like, now we're doing something really serious, you know. And there's in fact a great moment where he looks over to Jesse, played by Kaylee Spaney, and he has a laugh, which is crazy because it's during literal annihilation Armageddon moments of the film. And speaking of Jesse, well, she's us. She is you. She is everybody who is having those conflicting thoughts. And as the movie progresses as well, her response is differentiating to certain things. Are you recording certain things and wondering, what if I tried this? What if I did this? And after a while, you kind of realize that there are certain things happening where it's hard to separate subjectivity and objectivity, right and wrong. Sometimes it's just very clear cut. But that's a difficult process because so much you have to take in that certain point of time. And the movie uses her as a conduit for us asking those questions. And in that sense, I think what Garland manages to accomplish is pretty remarkable. Now, that might feel apolitical. And you might look at that and go, well, that's frustrating because enough has happened that, again, you want a viewpoint, right? But that's not really what the film is trying to do. It's not telling you exactly how you're supposed to react to things because, again, it's just showcasing certain things to you. And at the end of the day, it's your decision as to whether or not something feels right or wrong. And so I feel like if you walk out of this asking questions or feeling frustrated about certain things, it's almost like the movie is doing its job in that it wants you to have that debate and whether or not everything should work a certain way or if it should work the other way. And I think that's kind of smart. Now, that might also mean that you walk out of Civil War going, this is a movie that doesn't work at all. I hate this movie even. And that's totally possible. I don't see a situation where everybody loves everything that Civil War has to convey, but I also don't see a situation where everybody hates it. I also think there is a middle ground to be had over there. I am fascinated by how this conversation is going to go and the depths to which, the discussion can be had. I'm so curious what happens post-opening weekend. But make no mistake, regardless of that, the movie is pretty marvelous on every single account. In terms of the performances, Dunst, Mura, and Spaney, all three of them are fantastic over here. Kirsten Dunst is giving one of the best performances of her career here. She is really, really good. Wagner Moura is also really, really good in the movie. Kaylee Spaney is someone who I've been singing the praises of for a while now. She recently did Priscilla, where she played Priscilla Presley. She did a really good job playing her, and I thought that was a very great performance. And I think with this, she further proves that she is one of the best up-and-coming talents in the industry. And someone mentioned to me that there was a connect in that Kirsten Dunst and Kaylee Spaney have both been with Sofia Coppola in movies, so that's a nice connection, I guess. Full circle moment. But also the other performances like Stephen McKinley Henderson, he's really good in it as well. Nick Offerman isn't in it a lot. He is the president of the United States. You get a few moments with him, but yeah, he's in there. But whenever he's in there, there's one moment especially which I thought, perfect. They got that right. And there is a moment with Jesse Plemons in it where he plays this really bizarre, awful person, and yeah, that scene has to be seen. In a lot of ways, that scene acts as a pivotal moment for characters. I can't say exactly how, but you'll see as it plays out. It's also visually incredible. This movie is massive in a lot of ways. This is their most expensive movie, I believe, to date, A24's, and you can tell. It wasn't shot with IMAX cameras, but there is a sense of scale to it that is very effective in IMAX, because that was where our screening was, and there are certain moments that went very viscerally loud on screen, and those were extremely haunting to watch. These are not fun action sequences. As amazing as some of the visual effects are in those moments, with impeccable sound design, they're essentially horror scene moments. You are at the front lines with the journalists, so they feel just as scary and just as violent as you're expecting them to. The sound of gunfire is not something that feels distant. It's like right next to your ear. It feels like you can hear a submachine gun just going rat-tat-tat-tat around you. It's just really, really crazy. And big praise to all of that work. On a technical level, the film does excel. The soundtrack and score is also very evocative of stuff like Apocalypse Now. You may have noticed from the thumbnail, in fact, that there's a reference over there with the poster. And there is definitely that sense to it as well, where you're just kind of witnessing it. And there is a soundtrack over here that very much feels like a reference to that movie. And there are so many motifs in here that are spread out like that. I was just in such awe of the film after watching it that I've been thinking about it since seeing it. There are so many different ways to interpret the events of this movie, whether or not certain questions are answered for you or not, whether that's frustrating for you or if it works for you. And I feel like it's going to make for a very interesting viewing amongst all kinds of people. Having seen it, however, I can say that this is one of the best movies I've seen this year. I think it is a knockout on various levels, and it has a riveting pace from start to finish, keeps you locked in the entire time, and I can't stop thinking about it. It has a great start, and it ends with a perfect final shot that I was very satisfied with, as the film's narrative goes. And as haunting as it gets throughout, I really like the movie. In a lot of ways, it plays like a warning shot. Hey, this can happen if you don't play your cards right. Who knows? Maybe this stays a dystopic, fictional movie, an action thriller, maybe. But there's enough in here that parallels events that have happened recently as well, that you can sort of look at it and go, wow, it's a lot closer than it seems. Who knows? I don't know what the response, like I said, will be, but I'm so fascinated to hear it. But for my money's worth, I loved Civil War. And I'm going to give it a 10 out of 10. I thought about that rating for 2 days. I saw the movie on Thursday. I'm recording this on Saturday night, and I'm thinking about it even now. I was like, do I stick with that? And I really do. I mean, I have a few minor nitpicks here and there, but it brings things around so well. I love the film. I really did. Guys, thank you very much for watching. Look forward to more videos very, very soon. As always, if you like this, please do subscribe, and I will see you guys at the movies.